Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh to the Father but by me. He will never change. But you must change.
The alleged cover-up by leaders of the Southern Baptist Convention. The report lists hundreds of ministers accused of sexual abuse.
We are believing for 200,000 people to give contributions of $300 or more.
All right, there we go. Well, first the pastor awkwardly prays to the wrong person, and then the video doesn't work. So usually we get that right, but it's all good. I can't believe that Denny's commented on our post. I'll be honest with you, that's like winning the Super Bowl when you're like 41 years old. It's like, should I just retire now? Because it doesn't get any better than that. I've achieved my final form. I can't believe it. I'm excited. This is my moment. But there's a lot of things in life that I've discovered or I've heard people say they believe, and it's like, I just can't believe that. Like crazy facts, things that are hard to wrap your head around. And wanted to find a couple of them that found on the internet as I was researching. First one is this, and maybe it's not that unbelievable, but it's kind of a scary thought. There's over 150 dead bodies just hanging out on Mount Everest. It's too dangerous to get them down. So they use them as like land markers. It's like, just take a left at Doug. If you get to Sarah's frozen head, you've gone too far, you gotta go back now. It's just like, those are people. We're not gonna go get them, but I guess it's Mount Everest, right? Mobile phones are 10 times dirtier than a toilet seat. And some of you germaphobes are looking at your phone right now, and you're like, is this even worth it? If the sun exploded right now, it would take literally 8 minutes before we knew about it because of the distance. That's kind of a scary thought, right? There's over 80 million bacteria exchanged in a single kiss. Gross. 1 in 50 people have an aneurysm in their brain that just hasn't popped off yet. That's gonna keep me up tonight. I'm not gonna lie to you about that. That's scary. If you die at home, your cat will probably try to eat you. Even your cat is a bad person. Cats are bad people. The entire universe is completely silent, totally silent. Think about that. If you're floating through space for eternity, you get sucked out of the spaceship or disconnected, distethered, silence, no matter what. There's nothing out there. Miles and miles and miles of space, no sound. When you look at the stars in the sky, you're actually looking back in time, and maybe the thing that freaks me out the most is that when we see the furthest observable star in our universe, is that it is over 28 billion light years away. 28 billion years. I can't even begin to comprehend that. As crazy as it is that my iPhone is dirtier than a Taco Bell toilet seat, is not nearly as incomprehensible for me or freak me out as much as 28 billion light years. That's 28 billion years of travel at the speed of light, which I don't know if you know this, it's fast. It's fast, but it takes 28 billion years to get there. I have a hard time coming to terms with having to have more than a 2-hour flight, let alone a 28 billion light year distance. It's insane, it's incomprehensible, it's something that I just can't get my head around. But it doesn't stop there. There's so much more to the vast things that we don't actually know about science or our universe. But scientists believe that there is an increasingly possible potential that there are limitless dimensions and universes around us. And maybe you've seen this. I'm not just talking like a Spider-Man movie, multiple dimensions, although some of that kind of triggers out of this idea. But with these relatively new understandings of metaphysics, and there's this belief and this understanding that there could be multiple dimensions sitting on top, underneath, and all around our universe that we live in right now. Now, I'm not a scientist or a metaphysicist, but I'll do my best to kind of explain what I've read on this. And that's each dimension that exists out there in this limitless possibilities. Every decision we make, the network of decisions and the way that they interact with each other, every possible option exists in its own universe. Pick a number between 1 and 1 million. There's 1 million options in there. That doesn't even include the times where you want to be difficult and say 1.5 or 2.3. There are unlimited opportunities for that, branching off, existing kind of within each other, interconnected, this massive network and wave of different universes. That's a crazy thought. And if I say that, I have a hard time wrapping my head around that. I get my pessimism meter starts to kind of go off on that. What are you talking about? That seems ridiculous. That seems like something that's beyond reality. And listen, I don't actually necessarily believe that. I'm not here to tell you that that's the truth or that you should believe it, although it is kind of fun to think about. It blows my mind. It's one of those things when you're laying there trying to fall asleep at night and you're like, okay, what? Like, that's a bit much. But what I am telling you is that there are lots of very smart people that study this stuff that say that it's quite possible, that it's an opportunity to explore and it may exist in some way. So I want to ask you a question here tonight. Whether you're here in person, you're tuning in online, what do some people you know believe that you just can't get behind? What ideas out there do you know about that you're like, man, I don't know if this could be real? Maybe you believe in Bigfoot. Maybe you believe in ghosts, or your friend believes in ghosts. You got a friend that's super into aliens. Or maybe the craziest thing that you believe yourself is that something like Riverdale, if you watch it long enough, it's gonna redeem itself. Like, it's just, like, that writing is gonna come back and it's not gonna be just absolute garbage anymore. Or maybe you're naive enough to believe that the new Lord of the Rings series on Amazon Prime, Rings of Power, aren't bad. Bet there, people even agreeing with me, they're shouting out in church, they're so excited. Maybe you still believe that it's gonna get better, that it's not just your nostalgia of a past life, of your childhood that's holding it together, that makes you say, this is good. It's not, and I'm sorry. But what really do you believe? What do other people believe? What is that conspiracy theory, that thing that other people in your life think is true, and you're like, man, you have to really do some mental gymnastics to get around that, to understand it, to get to the point where you're like, that is even a possibility. Or maybe you believe something, and everyone else looks at you, and you're the crazy person in your friend group, and you're just like, unapologetically, I believe in that. I believe the earth is flat, or something like that. You're just, that's me. But what about outside of just your personal opinion? What about in the Bible? Are there certain things in the Bible that you're like, man, I don't really know if, like, how does that work, right? As you're reading through, you're like, this seems to be a little bit outside of normal physics reality. Well, I'll give you a couple examples. Like, what about a man eaten by a whale and living in it for 3 days and then being spat out and surviving? Or a global flood with a giant ark with animals on it, kind of as a restart to the world, to society, to all of existence. A virgin birth. Somebody being born without the biological act of sex. Turning water into wine. That somebody would take water and then put it through the fermentation process that should take years to decades to make the best wine. That's what Jesus did. They said it was the best wine. It was the best quality wine that was saved for last, which was unusual. You know, I could go and put some water and some Kool-Aid and put a little alcohol in there, some whiskey or something, and give it to someone, but a wine taster isn't gonna be like, this is the best stuff that's ever existed. It's gone through the process in a moment. They're gonna be like, what is wrong with you? You're a bad person. This was what happened. So does that make sense? Is that something you wrestle with? How did that happen? Is there something else that just you can't quite understand? What about this one? What about rising from the dead? Rising from the dead. Someone dying, being dead, and then not being dead anymore. And I'm not talking about like shocking them with paddles like moments after. I'm talking days later. I'm talking rigor mortis has set in. I'm talking medical miracle. There's no way this should work anymore. I'll be honest with you, because this happens in the Bible. This is a major claim about Jesus, that he rose from the dead. This is one of the more difficult elements of a Jesus-based life, of a biblical perspective, to really understand. Because it is, let's be honest, something that's difficult. When something is dead, every time I've experienced something being dead, it's dead. It's dead. If I'm driving down the highway, one day and I see a dead animal on the side of the road, some roadkill, and I go the next day, I'm not expecting it to just be like prancing around a meadow. It's dead. It's gone. Death is final. Death is the curtain call. Death is last call. It's over, finished. Death is the final frontier. There is no coming back from it. It's the thing that all things, all creatures, all animals, down from a mouse to a human, we all have this fear of death because it is the final chapter, it is the ending, and it's something that we avoid just in our psychology, deep in our bones at all costs. Death is the end. Death is even used as a punishment for the worst of us. In many places, the death penalty is reserved for the worst possible crimes. The Ted Bundys, the Jeffrey Dahmers of the world, the worst criminals, that is what's reserved for them. Now, I'm not saying that that's a good thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm saying that is, for those egregious, extreme punishments, death is there because it is the worst thing and the most final thing that we experience in this human life, and we all face it. Every person who breathes will experience death. It doesn't matter how many times that we cheat death or that we survive a terrifying sickness or something like that, everyone eventually does die, which is not fun to think about, but it's the reality. And overall, death, the reality is this. Death is a consequence for our actions, for the crimes that we've committed, for every time that in our life that we have chosen the chaos of sin to do something that is outside of what God has called us to. When humans began to sin and to disobey God, that's when death enters the world. This final thing, this ultimate punishment, not just being disconnected from life, but also being disconnected from the God that creates life. There is a separation that was committed and created in that moment where no longer could we be close to God. We had to be separate for eternity, and we eventually would die. A punishment for an act of treason and betrayal to the standards that God gave us, and that we continue to continue in our day-to-day life today with the decisions that we make every day when we make decisions that are outside of God's will. From the murderer to the thief to the person who's addicted, who chooses any sort of way that's outside of God's will, we have chosen death because we've chosen sin. We've missed the mark, and that's all of us, myself included. But sin doesn't have to be the end. We've learned and we know, if you follow a Jesus-based life, if you read through the Bible, that Jesus gives an opportunity to defeat death, to defeat that brokenness, to bridge that gap. And one thing that we do see is when we look at the New Testament, and if you look at the New Testament, maybe you've never been around church before, the New Testament is the second half of the Bible. It's the account of everything after Jesus' birth and everything, so it's called the New Testament. The Old Testament is everything before his birth, and it goes through kind of the Jewish scriptures. So it starts off with these 4 books, and they're called the Gospels, these first-hand accounts of Jesus' life by people that were following him: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. We see that Jesus actually experienced death. Jesus, God on earth, experienced death, the full human experience. And we see this through all of those stories, and that's a major part of what the Christian narrative is, and what our theology and our doctrine, what a Jesus-based life entails when we look at it biblically. Jesus lived a perfect life. He didn't deserve death. He didn't do anything to add to that chaos, to earn that punishment of disconnect from God. But yet, he was betrayed, he was tortured on a cross, and eventually he was killed and put in a grave. But 3 days later, just like he prepared and just like he said he would, he rose from the dead. Not 30 seconds later, no one shocked him back. 3 days later, at the point when you would already start to have some significant human decay happening, he rose from the dead. And there's many accounts of people who saw him after, and many accounts of problems that the people who had tried to kill him, they had with that and trying to cover it up. We know that he wasn't in the grave anymore. So I want to take you to a document in Romans where Pastor Paul, we've been talking this month about the book of 1 Corinthians. Pastor Paul also wrote a book called Romans to the church in Rome. And I want to take a look at Romans 6:5-11. It says, "Since we have been united with him in his death, we will also be raised to life as he was. We know that our old sinful selves were crucified with Christ so that sin might lose its power in our lives. We are no longer slaves to sin. For when we died with Christ, we were set free from the power of sin. And since we died with Christ, we know we will also live with him. We are sure of this because Christ was raised from the dead, and he will never die again. Death no longer has any power over him. Jesus rose. When he died once to break the power of sin. But now that he lives for the glory of God. So you also should consider yourselves to be dead to the power of sin and alive to God through Christ Jesus. And again, that's in Romans. So you also should consider yourself to be dead to the power of sin and alive to God. That's the power of Christ Jesus. So what does this mean? That means that Paul is saying that Jesus died, Jesus took on sin, Jesus rose again, and there's power in that. There's something there that gives us something that's worth seeking. Paul is writing to this church in Rome, and he's explaining this is the foundational faith that we need to have. This is foundational to what we believe. This is a big, big deal. We need to take this seriously, and if you don't take that part seriously, if you don't believe in everything that he's talking about there, you don't believe in the Christian ethos. You don't believe in what Jesus says about himself, that he was God, he died, rose from the dead, conquered death, and that there's significant power in that. Paul's saying that we deserve death and Jesus didn't, but Jesus died in our place and he covered those debts and he took that sin, he defeated it, and now we have him living and working through us, and that distance and that punishment that we deserved is no longer something that we're accountable to because he took it and we instead have eternal life available to us. So what's happening is we see this trend to the Corinthian church where they are actually not believing this. This is becoming a problem in their church, in their life. And you have to understand, Corinth was a Greek city, and in the Greek culture, this is pretty new. This Christian church idea is pretty new. They would have believed, had no problem with life after death, but it wasn't like how we might think about it. It's this disembodied, disconnected soul kind of disconnects, floating through time and space. The idea of a resurrection, of Jesus dying, of somebody dying and coming back to earth would be really preposterous and a huge stretch for them. But this is absolutely fundamental to what we believe as Christians. So Paul is facing this situation where he's finding these traditionally Greek new Christians are taking kind of everything about Jesus, everything about a Jesus-based life, but they're saying, yeah, you know what, I'm good with Jesus, I'm good with the love your neighbor thing, I'm good with all this different stuff, but the resurrection part, I'm not really down with that. Like, let's skip ahead to the good part because I just can't wrap my mind. That seems so crazy to me. And I can understand that, right? It's cultural for them. They've never seen it before. And I can get behind that a little bit. I can kind of understand their thought process because I've never seen someone raised from the dead before. And I think it'd be kind of cool, but I'd also probably get pretty scared, right? Like, that's a really wild thing. That's something that's so crazy beyond what we've ever seen that it's just, we have no frame of reference for it. And that is what's happening at this church. So, yeah, Jesus seems like a good guy, but that part I just kind of would rather not address. And I need to tell you this, because this is a trend that's happening in our culture today and sometimes in church. Jesus is who he was and continues to be today. Jesus is who he claimed to be. Jesus is who the Bible records him as. And even though there may be things that we are uncomfortable with, things that we have to research and wrestle with, go on a bit of a journey to understand and to comprehend, we don't get to change Jesus. We don't get to make a tailor-made God that serves us. We serve God, he doesn't serve us. But when we live in a society that's really just so consumeristic, everything's about me, I can pick everything. The algorithm feeds me nonstop what I want. When there's anything that's outside of that where I have to say, well, I'm gonna have to form my worldview around another way of thinking or someone else's or God's way, we're uncomfortable with that and we'd rather just look at the Bible, rip out a couple pages and say, nah, not that one. No dice, not for me. Just can't get behind that. You can do that, but you're not following Jesus anymore. If you take away something that is primary to who Jesus was, if you have a different of opinion or you just try to change what he said to make it fit you, you're missing the mark. And not in a punishment, not in a way that I'm scolding you, but God has so much more for you than what you might tailor make your relationship with him for. If you seek Jesus and everything he brings to the table, if you seek him in the truth that he has, you have to trust that he knows more than you, that he is God. And he can understand it. He's gonna give you what you need, and that you are not the best person to decide what's best for you at all times. Jesus is who he says he was. Jesus is who he's always been and will always be. So he's facing this. This is a bit of a struggle for him, right? Like, this is fundamental. We can't change this part. If Jesus didn't rise from the dead, then he's still in the grave. We know historically, this isn't some Christian conspiracy, that Jesus lived, was a teacher at minimum. We believe and know here at the Project that he was God, but historically there's no question that he lived, he was killed, and he was put in the grave. If Jesus never rose, he's still in the grave, and he has no power over sin. And it says in 1 Corinthians 15:14, Pastor Paul says, and if Christ has not been raised, then all our preaching is useless, and your faith is useless. That's a bit of a moment of vulnerability, to be honest, because if you were looking at Christianity as a conspiracy theory, and you're thinking, well, they're trying to manipulate, take my money, control me, all these different things, we probably wouldn't put in the book, the main book for the religion, for the value system, that, well, if we're wrong about this, and we look like idiots. If we're wrong about this, we look like idiots. Wasted your lives. I look like the king of idiots. I do this for a job. Preach it every week. If Jesus didn't rise from the dead, we are wasting our lives. We are just spiraling on a ball billions of miles per hour through the vast expanses of space. We're hopeless, pointless, purposeless, and you might as well pack it in because you're just here for 80 years that mean literally nothing. I don't know about you, but I'm not here for that. I don't believe that. I believe that God created the universe. God created you. God knew you before you were even born. God knew me. He knew we'd be in this room. He had a plan for our lives. He knew every disaster. He knew every outcome. He knew every success. He knew who you were going to be, and he knows who you were made to be and can be. There is purpose to life. And there is power in Jesus, and that power, it comes to a focal point in the fact that he not only died for us, but he rose again and defeated death. And I choose to believe, and I know in my heart, that this is not a waste of time. That we're here for something not just significant, but monumental and huge, that changes not just our lives, but can change the universe, and we're called to change the world around us. This is the biggest deal, the only thing. If you need to get one thing right in your life, if you only get one thing right, this is it. This is not something to be passive about. This is something to be passionate about. This isn't something to be casual about. This is something to commit your life to. And that's hard because you have to wrestle with it. You have to research it. You have to fight through things that don't always make immediate sense. There is a reality of faith. I'm not stupid. I know that there's difficult conversations that have to happen, and there's a journey to take us to where God wants us to be. But let me tell you this, if you're wrestling with that tonight, the journey is worth it because the destination is amazing. But the journey also has value, that you get to walk with God. You get to walk personally connected to the God that created the universe. 28 billion light years at least of universe. Think about that. Think of all the stars in the sky. Look at our solar system. When you go to the country and you're away from the light pollution, you look out and you see all those stars. Thousands of solar systems, millions, I don't know. I'm not a scientist, but I'm telling you this, there's a lot of them out there. Each one could have stars or planets, all these different things. It's just unlimited potential, and it rattles my mind to think about. It's beautiful, pictures of nebulas. You see that new telescope that they have with these beautiful pictures. We're losing our minds, and if you saw, one guy just put out a picture of a piece of pepperoni and said that it was like a nebula in a place far, far away, and the scientific community fell for it. I think that's the greatest troll of all time. But it is huge and beautiful, and God created it. But know this is something I remind myself of and have to because it's unbelievable and important. of all the beauty in the universe, all the planets, all the stars, God couldn't care less about it in comparison to you. Not to everyone in this room, not to the 8 billion people on the planet, to you. For what you've done, the mistakes you've made, the sins you've committed, the lies you've told, no matter where you've been, who you are, no matter how bad your week's been, he doesn't give a singular care about the beauty of the universe or anything on earth in comparison to what he cares about you. He loves you that much. And that's why Jesus died for you. Jesus was willing to go through torture for you, because compared to the universe, you are everything to him. And maybe you in your life, and maybe recently, people have told you otherwise, or you've been told by teachers or parents, you've never felt beautiful, you've never felt important, you've never felt like there's any purpose in your life. Well, I'm here to tell you tonight, that's a big load of crap. It's not true, it's a lie. That's what the devil wants you to think. You are so valuable. God loves you so much. God wants to see you achieve everything that you can, that all the potential that you have. And he has a plan for you. You just have to seek him and trust him and believe he is who he is, just like it says in the Bible. It's significant. Without Jesus rising, though, we lose all of that power. And I get it. It's difficult to comprehend. It's beyond my comprehension. There's cynics out there who would say it's not scientifically possible, like God, you can't prove these things. There's a lot of pessimism out there. And I understand that because I am generally a rational person and I have to wrestle through things like this just like everyone else, even though I land on the side of true faith in Jesus. But I'll tell you this, and this doesn't prove Jesus. When I look at that theory of the multiple universes and all the expanses of things and potentials that we're learning with metaphysics and these things that are changing the way we think about the world, there's multiple universes, black holes, or portals into other places, whatever, we don't know. But all I know is the more we know about science and the more we learn about the world, the less crazy it seems that there's a God that has always existed, that loves you and created you and everything around you. It's not completely crazy. It's not blind faith. It's faith based upon good reason. The world is a crazy place, and the more we learn about it, the crazier it is. But I believe that God could be a part of that. Seems to make sense to me that in a world that's so far away from what I can wrap my head around and what I would guess, that God probably had a hand in that. There's a limitless potential to our universe because we serve a limitless God who created and rules over that universe. And that means that he controls physics, science, measurement, anything, including death. He controls it. He defeated it. He has the keys to it. And when he came to earth as a person, as Jesus, fully man, fully human, he defeated death. Jesus defeated it, which means a couple of things for us today. First of all, Jesus is who he says he was, God. Jesus says, I am God. That's why they put him to death. He said, I am God. He did all sorts of things in God's name, healed people, and it caused a disruption to the controlling, crooked religious leaders of the day, and they put him to death because of it. Even though he didn't need to, even though he didn't have to, he chose to because he knew it was what we needed to be with God eternally and to be reconnected to God on earth through relationship with Jesus. And because Jesus is God, because he offers relationship to you and me through a Jesus-based life, through becoming a Christian, it means that Jesus can defeat anything. Jesus defeated death. There is nothing you can face in your life that is worse than death. There's nothing in my life I'm more scared of than death. I am so stinking scared of flying, you have no idea. It's a small tin can hurling through the air at 100 billion miles an hour. That's an exaggeration, but it's what I feel when we're going there. Miles in the air. I'm too big for it to begin with. There's babies screaming, and then there's the potential of falling. And people say, Jeff, are you scared of crashing? No, the crash is fine. Falling isn't. That's terrifying. I'm scared of death more than anything. Freaks me out. Thinking I'm 33 now, and I'm starting to think, well, if I double my life, I'll be 66? What? I'll get to eat off the seniors menu at Denny's, but let me tell you, I'm closer to the grave. That's unsettling, to say the least. But God defeated it. I will die one day, but I no longer need to fear it because Jesus is with me. And when I die, I get to be in heaven with Jesus forever. Be with God, reconnected. And if God and Jesus can beat that, help you to overcome death as you experience it, there's nothing that Jesus can't help you to overcome now. Whatever you're walking through in your life today, whatever you're stressed about, mental health or sickness in your family or your schooling, your financial situation, you're in fights with your parents, your friends, whatever you're stressed about, you just can't seem to get over it. An addiction to pornography or substance abuse, you can't get over it. You're not able to win. You've tried so hard. Listen, it's bad, and I'm sorry you're walking through that, but it's not as final, not as sudden, not as powerful as death. But Jesus defeated death. Jesus will help you through faith to overcome death. We'll experience it, but on the other end, we have freedom. And if he can do that, there's nothing that he can't walk with you through. There's nothing that scares him. He's been to death and he's come back. Your addiction doesn't scare Jesus. He knows that together you can get past it. Maybe even just in this perpetual cycle of poor behavior, of sin, of giving into the negative things that have been said about you for so long. You think, I can't win, there's nothing that can help me. Jesus can help you. Jesus will help you, but it comes, and that freedom comes on the other side of accepting that and choosing to allow God to work in your life, to have his Holy Spirit speak to you, to follow Jesus by following a Jesus-based life and seeing on the other end the freedom and redemption and that you can have just by following him and his example as we see in the Bible. And maybe you have done that before. It's been a long time. Maybe you've never heard this before, but it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from. This message, this truth, this opportunity to be with Jesus is for you, for your family, for your friends. Jesus wishes that no one would perish, but everyone would know him, and that includes you. In all of your failures, in all of your successes, he loves you, he created you, he died for you, he is for you, and he wants to see you succeed. He wants to see you become the best version of you that you can be. And that's not something to pump your tires and tell you you're gonna make a bunch of money. The best version of you can be is the version of you that most looks and behaves like Jesus. And we find that example in Scripture. Jesus can take whatever you're walking through. He can take the thing that seems like it's right in front of you, too heavy to move, the weight that you've been carrying on your back, and he can take it, carry it, destroy it. He is enough to help you through any situation and every situation. He defeated death. He can defeat whatever you're going through right now, but it just takes you to choose faith. Freedom comes on the opposite side of discipline and faith. So what does the resurrection mean for you, for me? Number one is Jesus defeated death. Talked about that. He won supernaturally. Second one is Jesus is God. The claims are true. He said, I was God, I am God. He was God. He is God today. He's working in our lives, and he's working in your life and heart right now, wants to speak to you. He wants to speak to your heart even as we're talking here right now. Jesus can defeat anything you're walking through. And Jesus will take the weight off your back. So there's a couple of different people I want to speak to tonight. Not individually, I'm not going to call you out. But to the skeptic, you're watching online, you're here in person, you're not really committed to this Jesus thing. You actually think it's probably a little crazy. You know, this guy on stage, he doesn't really know what he's talking about. He's kind of just stretching, you know, a God, Jesus, this book of rules in your mind. Listen, is it really that far-fetched? When you look at all the things we've talked about, when you look at the universe, when you look at everything we don't know, do you really believe that you know enough to discount and to say that Jesus isn't real? That everything that we put our lives to, everything I've committed my every existence to pastor, to bring people closer to Jesus, that people commit time and volunteer to, that billions of people around the world have dedicated their lives to, do you really believe that it's just craziness? Maybe you'll land on the other side and say, yeah, I still think that. I'd encourage you to be open, have an open mind, and just, what if you're wrong? What if you're missing out on everything? What if you're missing out on the most powerful and valuable experience that you could ever have? Just be open to it, starting tonight. To the person who's been searching for a long time, you're looking for connection, you know there's something out there, but you haven't connected the dots on it. I want to tell you, don't miss out. Congratulations, I'm proud of you for seeking for this. I'm proud of you for looking for what this might mean, for turning over every stone. You owe that to yourself to do that. You owe that to your one and only life to be able to say, I explored every angle. And if this is true, I believe you'll find it. You'll find that value. And to the person who believes, but has kind of lost the narrative a bit, Paul's talking to these people in the Bible who have just kind of given up the resurrection. It's just not important to them. That seems a bit big, right? Like to deny the resurrection. And I'm not saying that we have a problem here with people not believing in that part in this church, like it was in 1 Corinthians. But there is something that I think happens to us the longer we're in church, the longer we follow Jesus, is we can start to take that for granted. That we actually stop not believing, but stop understanding the power of what the resurrection means. We believe it, but it becomes a passive acceptance to us. And I've been guilty of this at times where we just kind of go through the pattern of church over and over and over and over, Sunday to Sunday, or maybe every second Sunday, or maybe you tune in online, whatever it is. We just go through those patterns. It becomes mundane and monotonous and just a repetition. We're just playing the same song on Spotify on repeat over and over, and it just becomes something that we memorize and don't think about. We do it on autopilot. You forgot that the resurrection happened, that it happened for you, that it means that there is power available to you, power to defeat the things that hold you back, power to be the best version of yourself you could ever be. The project, listen, this is the biggest thing that's ever happened in history, and it was for you. Don't become a passenger in this. Become a participant regularly. When we do communion, maybe you haven't been to church before, you don't know what communion is. When we take some juice, we take a cracker. These are symbolic representations of Jesus' blood and body being destroyed and injured and murdered on the cross. We do this as a church because across the world, we've been called to it by Jesus to remember him. Now, there's nothing powerful about these emblems, as we call them, these symbols, this juice and this not overly delicious cracker. There's nothing powerful about them. But we take this once a month, we take these seasonally, and it's easy to get into this pattern that just is something we do. But God wants you to know tonight and to remember, this is everything. This means everything. This is freedom. This represents freedom. These things symbolize not just the blood that was dripped, the body that was broken, not just the murder, but the resurrection. Because if we just celebrated the beating and the death, there's nothing to celebrate. But we stand out and we say, thank you, Jesus, because you rose from the dead and you made that available to all of us. Don't let yourself fall into that passive repetition, but not just in the moment when you're taking communion at church or wherever you are, but every day when we wake up, we should remember and be thankful and have this reverence for the reality that Jesus died for us, that Jesus didn't just die for the whole world, but for you individually, that he loves you more than he loves the advances of space, more than any star, more than any solar system. He would turn it all into dust just to save you. He loves you, and the resurrection gives us power and is an internal representation of the love that he has for you, and that's why he died for you and rose again and still carries on in power and has that available for you. 1 Corinthians 15, 55 to 57. Simple, you may have heard this before. O death, where is your victory? O death, where is your sting? Death has no victory. Death had sting, but that sting has been taken away because death isn't in control anymore. Your addiction isn't in control anymore. Your sickness isn't in control anymore. Your sin is no longer in control. Jesus is in control. So in just a second, we're gonna play a video. You were given a communion cup with the juice and the cracker in it. Be careful opening it. They're a little difficult. But we're gonna take that together. Sometimes we come up to the front, sometimes we do it all together. I encourage you, I'm not gonna lead you through it or explain it. I want you, while we play this video, to just reflect on the words and talk to God. Maybe you're the person who's a skeptic. Maybe you're the person who's seeking. Maybe you've been a passenger in your faith for too long. And it's time to reconnect and look at these things, not for juice and crackers in your fingers, but for what they represent and the freedom they offer to you today, tomorrow, and forever through eternity. Reflect on what this actually means for you and what change this brings to your life and potential opportunity it brings into existence for you as well. I think God's going to do some great things in our lives and speak to us in this time. And then at your own time, when you're ready, between you and God, drink the juice, eat the cracker, and remember what Jesus did for you. And if you weren't able to get one, if you missed at the door when they were handing them out, just up here at the front, we have a couple of baskets. You can run up and grab one just as the video plays. But just on your own time, let's seek Jesus together.